What's up, everybody? How are you all doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today, the Nintendo Direct conversation does continue because we are reaching a fever pitch in terms of hype and anticipation for a theoretical Nintendo Direct that could happen this month in September, which, as we discussed on a recent video, is a month that we're used to seeing Nintendo Directs happen. And so, even though Nintendo's been a little bit more sporadic with Directs this year, and they completely bypassed the summer and E3 time, as we've also discussed in the past, now everyone has become laser focused on this month, September. It makes a lot of sense. There are rumors and leaks and conversations and theories flying out there. It is absolutely insane. Some of them certainly make a lot of sense. Some of them maybe make less sense. Some of them are also incredibly exciting if there's any truth to them. And so I wanted to discuss just this crazy situation we're at where everyone is starting to boil over again, just waiting for a Nintendo Direct, and also discuss if some of these wilder theories actually make any sense. I think the most important thing to start off with is just when we would even see this Nintendo Direct happen, if it happens this month. And I'll reiterate what I said in one of my recent videos about a September Direct, and that I still do believe that we will see a Direct happen this month. It's not a lock. We know Nintendo, they do their own thing, and as soon as we get used to something and feel like it's more of a tradition or a schedule for them doing something, that's when they change it up. They already did that this year by not having a Direct over the summer, or filling in that E3 time with the lack of E3, where so many other companies seemed willing to step in and hold presentations and show off stuff. Nintendo, even though we expected them to maybe hold some kind of big Direct for the summer, they didn't do that. And they gave us a partner showcase thing near the end of July, which was fine. I know a lot of people really loved it. I wasn't super impressed by it, but it still was just a third-party focus show. They didn't talk about big first-party things. No major surprises there. It was just following up with a lot of stuff that we kind of already knew. Now, the big conversation about when it might happen in September is pretty exciting because a lot of us feel, and this is me as well, that it's probably going to happen next week. It could be as soon as next week. Right now, it's Thursday the 8th. This is the day before Splatoon 3 launches, which is very exciting. I cannot freaking wait for this game. I haven't even played the test fires. I'm just excited to play Splatoon 3 on day one as a brand new game. That's most exciting to me. I don't need to be sold on the gameplay about Splatoon. Like, I already love it. I didn't want to try the test fires. It's going to be a fresh experience when I turn it on tomorrow, and I'm really excited about that. But with that being the next big Nintendo first-party game reveal, or release I should say, happening in September, it's pretty common to see Nintendo wait for a big game to come out before then giving us a brand new Direct. So I think that some conversations and rumors out there about Monday the 12th being the day that Nintendo might announce the Direct to happen later in that week, I think that makes a lot of sense because Friday the 9th, tomorrow, we get the next big Nintendo game, Splatoon 3, and then potentially the following Monday or Tuesday, which would be September 12th or 13th, Nintendo might announce that the Direct is going to happen, and then it's going to, happen the day after the announcement or whatever. So, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week makes a lot of sense for us to see the Direct because it's going to be after their next big game, and it's the second week of the month. It's in September. It's in the first half of September. It gives a lot of time for any maybe last-minute surprises for 2022 to be announced and then also still release. And it just could be a really exciting thing. So a lot of people have put their money on next week, and I kind of think that that has the best chance of happening. So there are a few new ideas and rumors and leaks and stuff out there that I do want to discuss. But before I jump to the newer stuff that I haven't talked about yet, let's revisit really quickly the few things that I've spent plenty of time already talking about, which is the Zelda ports and remasters and the Metroid ports and remasters. Because specifically when it comes to these Zelda games, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, it's gone insane over the past week. Suddenly, everyone has been coming out of the woodwork saying, I've heard this, I've rumored this, I've leaked this person's saying that. And a lot of it is stuff we've talked about in the past, like Jeff Grubb's comments and Nate the Hate and all that stuff. But there's even more going around out there. And suddenly, it was basically the day that I released my own video that was dedicated to just conversations around these games that it was like the internet blew up after my video went live. Not in response to my video, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying my video started the conversation. It was just a crazy coincidence that that morning I put that video out discussing why I think this makes a lot of sense and we might see these Zelda ports happen. And then literally the news cycle just blew up and the conversation online blew up within the hours after my video went up. And it was like, hey, these are probably going to happen. Everyone prepare yourself for these ports. And so suddenly that whole idea of Wind Waker and or Twilight Princess coming to the Switch, hopefully this year in 2022, felt a lot more real the same day that I talked about it last week. And so now everyone thinks that if we get this September Direct, perhaps next week, that these games are almost for sure going to play a huge part of the show. Of course, the same questions still exist before we actually see if these games get confirmed. Are they releasing as a double pack? Are they releasing separately? Will they be full priced? Will they be half priced or budget priced? How much of a change are they going to do? Are they going to be straight visual ports of the HD Wii U games? Are they going to do something more to them or not? Or all of these things, these are still the mysteries. In fact, we don't even know if they would release this year or next year. Part of my conversation about them last week is the fact that Mario 3D All-Stars showed us that Nintendo can announce some HD ports of games in 1 week and then 2 weeks later release them. And so in theory, you know, these Zelda games or even the Metroid Prime trilogy or remake or whatever, in theory, they could be announced in a Direct next week. And then, you know, sometime in October, those games could release. So these could still be huge, big announcements, even though, yes, they're ports of older games. Huge, big announcements to show up in a September Direct for games that will still release in 2022 and give us a big last-minute surprise new game for a lot of us to be excited for. Even though most of us will have already played the games on prior systems, still very exciting, you know? And the Metroid thing is unique because November is actually the 20th anniversary of the original Metroid Prime. As you know, my #1 favorite game of all time. So these discussions about a Metroid Prime trilogy ported in HD or a full-on remake of Metroid Prime 1, which is what I would be most excited for personally, these things make a lot more sense when we consider Nintendo may be willing to announce and release a game within weeks of each other, and the fact that the 20th anniversary of Prime is happening next month, combined with the rumors about the Prime 1 remake. I mean, I really do believe that based on all of these conversations and people saying this and that about Zelda and Metroid ports, I think if we do have a September Direct, that one or all of these games are going to be a part of it. It just seems like everyone is just ready for these to be real, and there are people in the know who believe, you know, implicitly that they are real. And so, yeah, I think there's a great chance we're going to see these games this month. Now, let's talk about the biggest thing that blew up over the past week or two that I have yet to discuss at length. And it's this conversation about GameCube games coming to the Switch in some fashion. This is huge, and there are a lot of people, Liam Robertson, Nate DeHay, Jeff Grubb, you know, a lot of the same players that we're used to hearing from, talking about GameCube games getting some sort of major showcase on the Switch. And this could be like a collection of 20 games like on a Switch cartridge, which I would love, but I kind of doubt it would be that. Most people seem to think that it would be, you know, GameCube games coming to the Nintendo Switch Online service, which, if I'm being honest, is definitely the most likely option. I mean, of all the things Nintendo could do, I think that's the thing that they would be most likely to do. And it would be exciting. It's not what I would prefer. I love the idea of just, you know, just release a physical cartridge that's got 20 or 30 GameCube games on it, and that would just be amazing to me. Similar to the Genesis collection, I would just love to see something like that. But just being realistic here, I obviously don't think that that's the most likely scenario. It's probably Switch Online stuff. There could be a case to be made for them, you know, doing what I said I wanted years ago, which is just release one-off titles to be purchased on the eShop for like $9.99 a piece, and maybe they just start releasing a couple of GameCube ports. I don't know if they would do HD and widescreen or not. I mean, that's really tough to predict, but sure, I would love to see that happen, but it's probably going to be Switch Online stuff. So if that happens, yes, it's very exciting. And I'm somebody who hasn't been a fan of the expansion pack. I don't think, adding these other consoles, even though the Nintendo 64 is my favorite console, adding that and Genesis, and making it $50 a year, it just doesn't seem worth it for that value. I've stayed with the $20 base version, and I'm fine with that. Now, if they add GameCube games to the Switch Online, and if they don't increase the price again, that changes everything, and I will absolutely sign up for the expansion pack if they do something like that. Even though I prefer physical releases or individual releases I could download of GameCube games, if they do the Switch Online thing, but they don't increase the price, that suddenly becomes an incredible value, and being able to play original versions of, like, so many GameCube games, and Wind Waker, and Metroid Prime 1, and Metroid Prime 2, and Resident Evil 4, even though I guess you can already buy that on a different Resident Evil collection. See, man, it gets so weird and messy and just convoluted when you start realizing you can get Mario 64 in the 3D All-Stars collection, or you can get Mario 64 on Switch Online. Are they going to do the same with like a Metroid Prime Trilogy, but Metroid Prime Switch Online GameCube games? And same with the Wind Waker, or like I just said, Resident Evil 4. I mean, you start to get all this crossover. Hell, there's already a physical Genesis collection on the Switch that I own with 50 games, and now there's Genesis games on the Switch Online, and like half of those games are on both collections. And so we're getting into that kind of a weird territory if you think about it as well, but it is what it is, and it's just interesting to note that GameCube games are expected to make some kind of appearance on the Switch soon. And regardless of how it happens, and even if there's crossover, I can't deny that it's not very exciting. The Nintendo 64 is my favorite console of all time. GameCube is my second favorite console of all time. So, in theory, we could have both consoles represented on the Switch in the same generation, and I really love that idea, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any truth to this. The other semi-significant rumor that's been bouncing around out there is the idea of a brand new 2D Mario game. And some prolific leakers have also been talking about this, and that it would be kind of a refresh or a rebranding of the concept of 2D Mario. And I gotta tell you guys, do I believe it? I'm not so sure that I believe it yet, but I do think it's a great idea. I am somebody who more believes that the new 3D Mario game is probably the next Mario game coming down the pipe, but I do think a new 2D Mario game is needed, and it is a very exciting prospect. The new Super Mario Brothers stuff to me only had it only kept me interested for like 1 or 2 games. I believe the first game was on the DS, and then they made a really poor sequel, in my opinion, on the DS, and then they made the Wii game, and I thought that was okay. The Wii U game was okay, but I didn't even play much of any of those games. The only one I played to completion was the original one on the DS. I think the first one was a DS game. And it was really neat at that time. It's like, whoa, cool, like a reimagining of 2D Mario. Like, this is great. But then they just went nuts for a couple of years with it, and it got really tired and really boring really quickly, just for me personally, right? And then they did new Super Luigi U or whatever, and then they brought all those games over to the Switch, of course, And I think that there's a world for a refreshed version of 2D Mario. You're making it modern, just like the new Super Mario Brothers games were trying to do, but you're just, I don't know, you got a different control scheme, you got a different visual style, you've got new gameplay mechanics that are completely different from the new Super Mario Brothers line of games. And I'm not a game designer, so I guess I can't really think of great ways to say with my words how they could change it up. But they could change it up. And it's Nintendo, it's Mario, they know their franchise, they know how they could do it. They're a creative company. I'm sure that there's a way for them to change up 2D Mario and have it feel fresh while still also being 2D Mario, right? There's just a way for them to do it. And even though I don't know that I'm totally on board with this being real, like I said, it's a very exciting idea, and I love 2D platforming gameplay. It's one of my favorite genres out there. And so if this turned out to be true and something they would reveal in a direct this year, this month, that would be very exciting. The one thing I would say about this is that I doubt this would be a game releasing this year. This would be one of the big games they would probably be promoting for next year in 2023, which is one of the main advantages to having a last direct in the month of September, is to not talk about 2022 stuff, but to talk about 2023 stuff. And so a new 2D Mario game, the revival of Pikmin 4, a new Star Fox game, some of these surprises we expect to maybe see, these would be things to probably prepare us for next year. And that also applies to Breath of the Wild 2 if they want to give us information about that game. I think that a final surprise or update about Breath of the Wild 2 might be the last big thing we could potentially see. Maybe they end with the 5 or 7 minute presentation, kind of like they did with Skyward Sword HD last year. And they talk about that game and they say, hey, we're ready to give you a title for the game. We're ready to give you a release date. You know, maybe they say it's February, March, or April or something next year. And they show us a new trailer of some legit gameplay and story, but they still say that they're saving the best for next year. And I could see them doing like an hour-long Nintendo Treehouse presentation about Breath of the Wild 2, you know, a month or so before the game launches, if it sticks to spring next year, which I think it's going to get delayed one more time, as I've said many times. But if I'm wrong and the game sticks to spring, then yeah, why couldn't they give us, in a September Direct next week, a big preview of that game and just tell us some real information so we have something to go on before we get a big blowout next year? More so than these, 90-second teasers they've given us. Give us something more substantial. If the game is going to stick to spring next year, and if we get a September Direct, I think there's a great chance we might get some Breath of the Wild 2 stuff. So this is where we're at. Everyone is just clawing their faces off to get a new Direct. Many of us think it's going to happen this month. I believe next week has a great chance at happening. And so it's exciting. And so now we're talking about GameCube games and Zelda ports and Breath of the Wild 2 and 2D Mario games and all these different things. And there's a lot of people who have some track records of being correct with some things, talking about stuff that they've heard, you know. I think the GameCube games might actually be real. I think we might see Metroid Prime and the Zelda ports before the year is over. I think this stuff makes a ton of sense. So it's very exciting. You've heard my thoughts, and I want to hear what you think. Talk about it below. With that, this video is a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll see you next time on another video. Bye-bye.